Amy. Identify as a female, so I go by she, her pronouns. I am transgender. I kind of thought I wanted to talk to you guys tonight about a couple of things, but one of the things that I've been involved in recently, my aunt actually works in the New York City prison system, so she was asking me recently to help her out compiling information and how best to handle the LGBT population in prisons, as well as specifically the way that transgender women are treated in prisons and how they're held, because Rikers Island specifically in New York City has had a very poor history with how they treat their LGBT population. I personally, I didn't know how best to go about, I can research as good as anyone else, but I mean, like, I've never been incarcerated. I'm transgender, but I don't consider myself somebody that's vulnerable so much, because I've never experienced anything that I felt like I was ever in really, really serious danger. That's why I'm out here, because there's communities that won't, my own, like, I'm trans, they're my family, and they can't come out here because they don't feel safe. And it's not because they don't feel safe in their own community, it's because they don't feel safe. This is one of the things that I actually reached out to some of my friends and asked them, that they don't feel safe because if they get arrested here, there's no telling on what would happen to them when they're in prison. And that's their biggest fear of being out here in general. So, I guess that's really one of the key points that I wanted to bring attention to, is the fact that one of the things that happens when trans women are kept in prison, they're kept in solitary confinement. Does everybody understand what solitary confinement is? Okay. So, one of the women on the shirt that I'm wearing, Layleen Palenka, she had a medical history of seizures. She had a seizure condition. And the protocol for prisoners that have those kind of conditions is that they're constantly monitored and checked every 15 minutes. She wasn't checked on every 15 minutes, and she was kept in a cell by herself in solitary confinement. Those cells are not meant to let sound out. When you're in there, you're in a hole, and that's why they call it the hole. She died, she had a seizure, and the guards they were cleared of any wrongdoing. They claimed that nobody could tell, they thought she was just sleeping. When video footage emerged, it showed them laughing outside her cell. This is the way that trans women are treated, honestly, in general. I've been lucky enough that I've never really experienced that degree of hatred, but I have experienced my own fair share of mistreatment, let's just say. Sexual assault on trans women often goes unreported because there's never any effort to do anything about it. In New York, a majority of the women that are locked up are essentially locked up for a charge that's colloquially known as the walking while trans law. Essentially, the law states that if you're walking on the street and you're transgender and they identify you as transgender and you have anything as much as a condom on your person, they can arrest you for solicitation. And they do it frequently, specifically to transgender women of color. They're quite possibly one of the most targeted communities in the LGBT, like subsection of the LGBT community, that nothing's ever done about it. And it's not something that it often goes unaddressed because there's differences in our own community, in the LGBT community, because, I mean, there are people that are gay that don't like trans people. Transphobia doesn't exist in one place, it exists all over the place, just like racism exists all over the place. I can only explain to you the trans experience from my own perspective. I can't give you the entire perspective, and I wish I could. I I work a lot with trans youth because, especially locally in the community, because a lot of the time they're really the most forgotten groups of people. There's nobody there to tell them what to do. There's nobody there. They're from the South. I mean, they're from the Bible Belt. There's no welcoming families usually, and a lot of the kids that I work with are usually trying to look to me to tell them how to deal with their own families, and I can't because my own family doesn't support me. I mean, they love me for who I am, but they don't. That's just something that we grow to deal with. It's sad, but we learn to stop looking for love. And I wish the world weren't like that, and I wish I didn't have to tell you something so sad, but that's, a lot of the time, that's how it feels. And a lot of them can't come out here because they just can't bring themselves to support anything at this point, because nobody supports them. And I've tried to get some of my friends out here, and honestly, I had a few people tell me they might come out, but I later found out that apparently none of them wanted to come out. They all knew and made up their mind as soon as I asked. As far as what the trans experience is, it's just trying to make it, despite the fact that people hate you for looking the way you do or for who you are. I tell everybody that I work with, don't go out looking for validation, because you can't expect everybody to hand it to you, but you have to go out there learning to live with the fact that that's the way some people are and there's nothing you can do about it, and just pick your head up and go out. Be the best person you can be and do what you want to do. I had a few people asking me questions about how, like, they don't know how to address trans people and, like, how to, like, I guess, does anybody have, like, a question regarding that? I don't know really how to address that.
We talked about a little bit, like, when I saw you, I saw you as a person, as a woman. Like, is that how you want to be?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
like,
trans
I
people.
don't feel like, hey, are you trans? You know, I don't think that's
No, well, okay, so trans people don't always want to, like, I don't identify as a transgender person. I identify as a trans woman. I mean, I'm a woman. I don't go around telling people, like, I'm a trans woman.
Yeah.
Because that's just a mouthful of shit that I don't really.
It's defeating.
Yeah, it takes away from my own identity, kind of, because it's like I'm not really a woman then at that point when you add the trans woman. A lot of times I hear people say things like, oh, they're transgendered. That's not a word, it's transgender. You're either a trans person, a transgender person, or whatever else you have it.
You don't say it's transgender person or
Yes.
transgender.
You're not transgender.
Oh.
Yeah, with the ED at the end of it. That's like, it's annoying. One of the same concepts that, like, because since I've been hearing a lot of the things that Tim talked about, I can draw parallels to it from my own experiences and my own identity. And one of the things that, like, there's the white savior, complex. There's kind of that for straight people. There's a lot of times where, I mean, like, I have very thick skin. I've had some nasty things rolled to me, and I work at a nightclub. Like, I've had some terrible things said to me, but I can deal with that. What annoys us sometimes is when people come running up like, oh my god, are you okay? Are you okay? Like, trying to check my feelings like that. So, like, I appreciate it, and it's like, we do appreciate it when it happens. It's just like, sometimes we feel like there's people that are coming up and trying to give us that shoulder to cry on, and we're tough. We've been there. We can deal with it. We'll pick ourselves up and deal with it. I mean, if you see somebody vocally, like, visibly going down, like, yeah, that's nice if you can go and swing it and help them. But, like, the whole thing where people try and make it like, oh, I bet you I lit up their day today. Like, I definitely made their day by saying this. You know what?
Are there places for, like, more education about it? Are there places for more education about it? Are there places for more education about it?
So there are. You can actually look up, do I have you on Facebook?
I don't get on Facebook very often,
definitely.
so get my Snapchat because
There's
I
a couple
hate
of different.
Facebook.
Yeah, no, I feel you. There's a couple of different organizations that I could give you that have a lot of information, a lot more like current information. Because a lot of stuff gets dated in our community.
Yeah, I've asked questions because I used to work with my friend Saad,
Okay.
and he's told me a lot about like current events and stuff, but I no longer work there,
Okay.
so I haven't really been updated on any information that's
I
going
gotcha.
on right now.
What was your friend's name?
Saad,
Sod. Trying to think of my name.
he used to go by Van.
Okay. I think it's a lot of like to pull one of your favorite words, microaggressions.
It is. It's a huge micro.
There's so many microaggressions that I deal with on a normal basis that I shrug off because normally that kind of stuff, like I said, I'm thick-skinned. That stuff doesn't really bother me, and I have a lot of friends that'll sit there and like jump up and be like, listen, you can't do that. I'm just like, don't worry about it, it's fine. It doesn't bother me that much, but there are people that it can ruin their whole day. You never know what somebody's going through mentally. Like, depressed people wear masks. And a lot of trans people are constantly battling depression.
A lot of it's undiagnosed and untreated because they don't have access to resources.
Especially now, because now doctors have a legal right to tell them, I don't agree with your lifestyle, so I'm not going to treat you. Unfortunately, that's a bill that was signed into law. And, sorry. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's really tough to pinpoint and give a reason why and a way that we can bridge the gap. I really wish there's more I could do, but unfortunately, it's not a unified community even in our own community. Like, we don't. I mean, there's people that live in this community that are trans that I've never met, and I end up meeting them one night because they happen to come into the club and they're like, oh, I've been here forever, and we talk and they're like, I can't believe we haven't met each other, or we haven't hung out or something like that. And a lot of them are trans women of color, and honestly, I wouldn't have I said this once, I wouldn't have my identity and I wouldn't have the right to be who I am at this point today if it weren't for trans women of color. So, I mean, the thing is that working on the way that we treat people as a community, just irregardless of gender identity or anything like that, like, I think there's just this natural inclination in people there is a natural inclination in people to fear what's different. And I mean, like, I've seen, it's not, I wouldn't say like across the board everyone, like I can spot somebody who automatically hates me, but I can tell when somebody, like if I walk outside my door, my neighbor's kids outside are playing on the driveway, I'm telling you, like within 2 seconds, they're gonna get their kids inside. They don't want them near me. They don't want them to see me. Like, it's the weirdest thing in the world every day that I'm in Walmart. Like, I go into Walmart sometimes. They all came out today.
Yeah. Let them have their moment.
Right. There's times that I've gone into Walmart and, like, turned an aisle just to go down and get something, and there's, like, a mother and her 2 kids, and she pulls her kids to the side. Like, there's just this, people form opinions the minute they lay eyes on somebody. And it's with, like, I don't believe in the whole, I don't see color thing, but I just learned a long time ago, because I used to parrot my parents. Like, I grew up in a very conservative family. I used to parrot everything. Like, I used to make homophobic jokes. I hated who I was when I was younger. And it took me a long time to realize that I was that way, because I thought that I was that way, and I hated that kind of stuff, and it scared me, and it took a lot of years of therapy, but it took a long time to really figure out that, like, I was assigning these opinions of people based off of what I saw, and I didn't want to be that person anymore. So when it comes to why I'm out here, to answer, because I wasn't here the night that Tim asked that, it's because I don't like when one group of people has more rights than the other. I don't like hating people because of who they are. I don't want to be that person. And if it ever came to when we're at that point where it's you're either on this side or you're that side, I look at it as how could I ever be on that side? I want to be on this side. I don't ever want to. At some point, I don't know if I'll have kids, but if I ever were my nieces and nephews, I don't ever want to sit there and be able to tell them like that. Yeah, this was happening. I saw it. It was on the news all the time, but I didn't really do anything about it. Like I care, and I don't think you should need a reason to be out here. You just need to be on the side of human rights. Like you need to be on the side of people. Like equality means everyone. Doesn't mean certain people. You can't cherry pick who gets those kind of rights. And if I want it for myself, I can't possibly not want it for somebody else. There's a lot of things in my own community that I'm learning still. Like I really wasn't active in my own community until I moved down here. It took moving down to Wilmington for me to start like being able to be the person that I was. I was in the Navy. Being in the military, with everything when Cape Fear Latinos were here, it hit me really hard because sexual assault in the military happens. I know people who it's happened to. I've been assaulted. I've not been sexually assaulted, but I have been assaulted because of who I am in the military. It's very real, and it goes completely unaddressed because it's just one of those institutions that's always been a certain way, and it's always going to be that way. And the people that have the ability to change it are never going to do it. It's not in their interest, let's just say. But it really took me a long time, and honestly, like, I go back up to New York for holidays, which is another issue because I can't go to certain family members' houses. I'm not welcome in there. But I go up to see my family for the holidays, and every time I end up calling one of my friends, like, crying hysterically because it's like I'm homesick. I don't feel like my friends from home don't want anything to do with me because of who I am. Like, it takes, which is the sad thing, because a lot of friends, this goes back to what Tim said, nobody owes you an explanation, and a lot of my friends found out about me because, like, and I deleted them all on Facebook, but people have their ways, and they resented me for not coming out to them, and that's like a really big issue, is people think that you owe, like, people have this inherent sense of entitlement, like they're entitled to know this information about you, otherwise they just don't know what they can go about their day. It's never anyone's business, just respect. That's all anybody, if you want it for yourself, give it to other people. Don't, like, I always say that I give people exactly what they're willing to give me in return. So I'm going to offer you about as much respect as you're willing to give me in a situation. That's partially something I learned in the military, because though it was problematic, the military did have some really good benefits. It taught me a lot of things about being a person. It taught me a lot of things about being an individual and taking charge of my own life. And I credit it in a large, like, I resent them because they turn their backs on me for who I am, but I really give them a lot of credit because they gave me the power to be the person that I am today. And, like, honestly, like I said, I had a whole planned speech, and I was too terrified to remember any of it. And, I mean, normally I wouldn't get up and speak to anybody. I'm quiet. If anybody knows me from being here, I've literally, like, for the longest time, just kind of, and still often sit by myself and sit quietly. It's just because that's my own mental state, and I need to kind of get back and recharge. I get very socially exhausted very quickly. But I do my very best to, like, try and be friendly to people. I've heard a lot of people asking questions about how, like we said this before, how to address people. try to say, don't ever, don't assume, like Tim said, but if you see some, like, I'm dressed a certain way, I've still had people come up to me and go, like, what's up, bro? Like, what's up is I don't go by bro. Like, it's very simple. Like, I don't dress like a bro, so I would think that that's a simple thing that you could understand, but some people don't. And some people, and that's because there are gay men that are feminine. Like, they would wear short shorts too. And there's no problem with that because there's nothing wrong with normalizing femininity. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Everyone has a feminine side. Men have estrogen. Y'all have it. Like, it's in there. So, living in traditional gender roles sounds like really PC culture, but, like, it's not. There's seriously, like, I don't want to say living in a society, but it is living in a society where we put things into categories is just such a tedious thing to live in. I mean, honestly, I can't give a whole lot of insight into non-binary because I'm not non-binary, so it's not my experience and it wouldn't be authentic. But honestly, like I said, I'm still learning. So, like, I don't know everything about, like, there's no right and wrong way to be trans. Like, there's so many people that transition so many different ways, and my experience isn't necessarily, like, the experience. Somebody else's experience isn't necessarily the experience. And, like, the trans community has they have a hard time. The same, anything you can say about trans women can always be mirrored into, like, oh yeah, that's a women's thing. Like, that's, like I've said, like, guys are such assholes. I'm like, yeah, guys are assholes. Like, no, I know, but, like, sometimes it's a little different when you're a trans woman dating, and it's like, you don't know if the guy just looks at you as, like, a fetish, or, like, he likes you for who you are, and then having to explain those things like that, like, there are very similar things that we go through, but in so many different ways, because our identity gives us a different perspective on things. Like, people treat you, human behavior is, like, one of my favorite things to study, because, honestly, like, I love being able to unpack, like, everything that's going on that somebody, like, from somebody's body language. And one of the things that I realize a lot of the times is, like, when I'm talking to somebody, they feel uncomfortable. Like, guys feel uncomfortable, and I can tell it's because they don't know how to address me. Like, they don't want to talk to me like a female because they're not really 100% sure they see me as a female. And, like, that's...
Use the ball.
I'm a non-binary trans woman, and I don't really want to explain all that, so I would just recommend YouTube. Also, there was a new movie on Netflix that came out called Disclosure. Y'all should check that out.
Here's your homework.
And I guess I just wanted to, like, give a few stories or personal anecdotes about my experiences. On January 20th, 2017, I was arrested at Donald Trump's inauguration, along with, like, 200 plus other people. And we were given, like, 7 or 8 to 14 felonies each. Yeah. And Tim actually helped raise money for our legal defense. So thank you. And so one of the experiences, at the time, I wasn't really out, except to, like, a few people, and I remember when I got arrested, at the time I was, like, male presenting or whatever. I guess I still am in some ways. And I remember the cop asked me, he was like, so what are your pronouns? And I was kind of stoned because nobody had ever asked me, and especially not, like, a person in authority or whatever. Like, I was like, huh? And he's like, oh, we have to ask that now. And I was like, he, him. My pronouns are she, they, by the way. And I remember I was really nervous, so I said he, him. They put me in a cell with all the other dudes that I had gotten arrested with. And then later when I got out, I had heard that every person that answered, that was basically trans or non-binary, were put into solitary confinement cells and were groped and harassed and sexually assaulted. And I'm not sure whatever happened with that, if they got like a lawsuit or anything like that, but I remember hearing that and that was like absolutely terrifying to me. And all I could think was like, damn, if I had said that, I would have been there. So yeah, I did not get charged with anything. We all got our charges dismissed except for a few people. Fuck Donald Trump. Fuck Donald Trump. Fuck the alt-right. It was an anti-fascist march. And I know that we're all paid by George Soros, but I just want to point out that, like, if you're out here, you're probably anti-fascist. Like, you're technically Antifa, even if you, like, nobody walks around and is like, I'm Antifa. So all of that stuff is a bunch of bullshit. How we're, like, some top-secret organization. We're pretty disorganized. And then some other experiences. Me and Jamie have a mutual friend that we've been trying to get to come down here. And she's a trans woman of color, and I would credit her with making me feel comfortable enough to come out. Because she was like one of the first people I ever came out to. And like, I wouldn't be where I am now if it weren't for her. But she's afraid to come out here. She doesn't really go out to a lot of things. And I get why. And like Jamie was saying, like, whereas like, we experience shit like every day. I mean, even today I went to go and buy this long sleeve thing because it's hot out, but I have tattoos and I have an FBI file, so I don't need them knowing who I am or what I'm doing. Hence the mask. And I'm like, even when I went to buy this, the guy was like, "Oh, have a good day, sir." And like, I'm just like, really? Or like, even if I'm wearing like full makeup and like a dress, it's still the same thing. I'll go into the get gas and they're like, "Alright, have a good day, sir." And I'm like, really? If I'm wearing like a tight shirt, you can see I have titties. I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, not that you need that to be a trans woman either. You shouldn't have to dress like a woman or even take hormones or have surgery to be a woman. But all I could think was like, damn, like, I gotta try so hard to perform like femininity, and I still don't get, like, it still just doesn't happen. I'm like, what the fuck? I remember one day I went to go pick up my meds, my hormones, and when I had gotten coffee, I was wearing makeup, and the person was like, "Oh, have a good day, sir." And like, I didn't want to say anything, because you can kind of tell some people just don't know or whatever. And also, it's like, then I'm creating the scene, you know, it's always like us that we're gonna get in trouble for. And then I went to go to the Walgreens to pick up my meds, I pull in, and then another car pulls in right next to me. It's like this old white lady. She looks dead at me, turns the car back on and backs the fuck up and parks like all the way across, and I was like, damn, and I like started crying right there and just had to wait before I went in to pick up my stuff. And that was just like so humiliating. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't even do anything. And like, talking about sexual assault. I've been sexually assaulted 7 times in the past 3 years. That happens an awful lot. And like, the men objectifying us, or like, you know, chasers, fetishizing us, that's all over. Like, and it's the same people that will say some of the most transphobic shit. And then they'll come and hit me up on Grindr. Like, another problem is, fuck that cop over there. Another problem is, you know, drugs with trans people. A lot of trans people are like vulnerable with like addiction. I was addicted to meth because that's a big thing in the LGBT community here. I have like almost 5 months sober. But that just seems to get worse and worse here. Every time when I would have Grindr, every time I go on there, it just seems like it gets worse and worse. And I remember when I went into rehab at Coastal Horizons, I got asked if I liked to wear ladies' clothes, if I was the receiver or the giver. I got told at least I wasn't out sucking dick for drugs.
Yikes.
Somebody asked me when I talked about how I had gotten arrested if I had fun in jail. And that didn't even register to me until after, and then I was like, oh, I got that.
That's
And
yeah, like that's just the kind of shit that we have to deal with like every day. Every day I get misgendered, and I didn't come out until pretty recently, a few years or so. But I remember also like Jimmy talking about how like when you're younger, you kind of, I don't know, I would say homophobic things too, because I was just super afraid like to be like, okay, is that me? I got called a faggot every fucking day. Every day. And I was just like, I didn't even know to myself that I was that. But it was like, I tried so hard, I was like, no, I can't be that. I can't, like, can't let them be right. And even, like, I asked him if he could help me, like, if he could come with me to the bathroom over there, because, I mean, this is one of the first places I've probably been in public wearing, like, shorts like this, because I just feel awkward as fuck. And I see, like, the fucking pickup trucks driving past me with the old white rednecks, not the stereotype, it's often, like, that's a threat to me, I don't care. Whether they're cool or not, I don't know until I know, so, and that, like, makes me nervous, like, even parking and walking up here, I'm, like, constantly on my guard, and, like, Jamie, I think it was, you said that there's been, like, a ridiculous amount of black trans women that have been killed just in the like during Pride Month. Like,
I have 3 shirts filled like this with names. That's all from the past couple of months. That's a fucking problem. Pardon my French.
Like in this state alone.
yeah, one of them. I think at least one of them was in Charlotte.
Charlotte,
I believe
Lumberton.
2 is in Charlotte, and then